I want now to look at the very important subject of why it took a whole 3 weeks to publish the evocative last photo of Madeleine. It was on Thursday the 10th of May, a week having gone by since Madeleine was reported missing, that both Jerry and Kate McCann found themselves in Portimao Police Station to face a series of difficult questions. On that occasion, Jerry was detained for 13 hours. His friend, Dr. Matthew Oldfield, was also interviewed that day, and obviously put under great pressure by the police. He was described as almost hysterical in the interview. Jerry McCann heard him shouting and crying. Perhaps he was struggling to explain all the absurdities surrounding his insistence that he really did check on the children at about 9:30 p.m. the night Madeleine was reported missing. That day, the 10th of May, Kate sat in the waiting area for 8 hours before being told that it was too late for her to be interviewed that day. But she also told us this: "I made use of the long wait I anticipated by sitting down with a notebook, pen and my camera containing the dated photographs of the holiday and trying to write a detailed account of everything that had happened the week before." So here she gives a clear indication that, so she says, all her images had a date stamp imprinted on them. She makes sure the word dated is in there. Meanwhile, Jerry McCann, during his police interviews, said apart from those 2 discs that he and Michael Wright had handed in the day before, he had no others in his possession. A number of these pictures featured the Paynes children, so the McCanns must have used a number of photos from the Paynes camera. It's probably reasonable to assume that the 3 playground photographs we saw before were taken by the McCanns, and as we saw earlier, we can say with near certainty that all 3 were taken on day 1 of the holiday, the Saturday. But if that's the case, where are all the other photographs that the McCanns took that week? It was a Canon camera, a Canon PowerShot A620, that was left in the middle of the table in the living room of the McCann's apartment. And we must assume that when she was holding a camera while Jerry McCann was being interviewed by the police in Portimao on the 10th of May, that was also her Canon camera. It almost looks like a prop. There are very few objects visible in the photograph, and so the camera seems to stand out, almost ostentatiously, as if to say, "Look, our camera, nothing to see here." But as we have seen, there is evidence from the black and white photos on the 2 CDs handed in by Jerry McCann that the images have been tampered with deletions of many of them, and cropping of some others. And let's suppose, as I shall be suggesting later, that something serious happened to Madeleine much earlier in the week, it would be perfectly possible for the McCanns, or someone they knew, to have removed the memory cards, deleted inconvenient photographs, cropped them, or perhaps even removed them altogether and substituted a new memory card. Done all of this before they claimed later in the week that Madeleine had been abducted. They could also have stored the images on a computer disk for later amendments to be made by them. If so, there would be nothing incriminating for the police to find in their camera. It seems that the Portuguese police never seized the camera. There is no mention of their doing so in the files, and they therefore let the McCanns take it away with them as they moved that night after reporting Madeleine missing to stay in the Paynes flat. We can hardly blame the Portuguese police for this unfortunate omission. For a week, the McCanns had been insisting that Madeleine had been abducted, aided and abetted by a mighty public relations and media onslaught. These 3 individuals, Jerry McCann, Alex Wolfall and Michael Wright, examined various memory cards for the dual purpose of A. producing 2 CD discs for the Portuguese police, and B. producing images for the mass media. Some of those images had been cropped before they got to the Portuguese police, showing that they had already been digitally altered. All of this demonstrates, without a shadow of a doubt, the potential for manipulation of the memory cards before they were sent to Hampshire Police and before Jerry McCann and Michael Wright handed in their carefully selected photos on those 2 CDs. Inconvenient photographs could easily have been deleted, cropped, or even photoshopped. so as to attempt to confirm the McCann's account of events that week. And what do we make of this part of Jerry's statement on the 10th of May, when Kate was also in the police station, Canon camera in her hand? The witness fully confirms the statements made previously at this police department on the 4th of May 2007, being available to provide any further clarifications. Asked, he clarifies that, apart from the personal photographs already delivered by him to the police authorities after the disappearance of his daughter Madeleine, he has no others in his possession. He adds that it is his wife Kate who usually takes pictures. He does not recall taking any pictures during this holiday at night. This is an outright lie. The photographs on the CDs handed to the police did not include the last photo. But Jerry and Kate still had possession of the last photo taken on the Canon because it was published 2 weeks later on the 24th of May. He told the police a barefaced lie. So this brings me back to the subject of the last photo and whether or not it was taken at 2:29 p.m. on Thursday the 3rd of May, the afternoon of the day Madeleine was reported missing. It appears to be a genuine photograph, taken by Kate McCann on the McCann's Canon camera. This is what Kate McCann says about the last photo in her book. Some images are etched for all time on my brain. Madeleine that lunchtime, Thursday the 3rd of May, is one of them. She was wearing an outfit I'd bought especially for her holiday, a peach-coloured smock top from Gap and some white broderie Anglaise shorts from Monsoon. A small extravagance perhaps, but I'd pictured how lovely she would look in them, and I'd be right. She was striding ahead of Fiona and me, swinging her bare arms to and fro. The weather was a little on the cool side, and I remember thinking I should have brought a cardigan for her, although she seemed oblivious of the trauma, just happy and carefree. I was following her with my eyes, admiring her. I wonder now, the nausea rising in my throat, if someone else was doing the same. We've already noted that on the last photo, Jerry does not look as suntanned as he does by the end of the week. That is one indication that the photo might not have been taken on the Thursday as claimed. Are there any others? Let's look first of all at the way Madeleine is dressed. The most obvious feature is her pretty pink one-piece dress. As one observer remarked, it looks like she is in her Sunday best. What was Madeleine allegedly doing that Thursday morning? It is claimed that on Thursday morning she had been sailing with other members of her group. It seems unlikely that she went to the creche that morning dressed in the pretty pink dress if she was going to go sailing. If she did not, then in order for her to be photographed in the dress at 2:29 p.m, the McCanns must have gone back to their apartment and changed her for the afternoon into that dress. But let's move on to a much more significant area of concern, namely the weather on the day that photograph was taken. If we look at the photograph, we see very short shadows. The sun was at its highest that time of year around 1:35 p.m. The photograph was probably taken within 1 hour of that time. The last photo is said to have been taken at 2:29 p.m. So the shadows, at least, are consistent with what the McCanns say about this photograph. The shadows show us that it was a sunny day at the moment the photo was taken. Let us also consider these 6 points. 1. Jerry McCann is dressed in a t-shirt and shorts. 2. He is wearing sunglasses. 3. There is a sheen of perspiration visible on his forehead. 4. The children are both wearing sun hats. 5. Jerry McCann's feet are in the pool, which Kate described in her book as very cold. 6. There is no obvious sign of any cooling breeze in the picture. Some might say this picture could have been taken in a few moments of sun on an otherwise cloudy day. But with Jerry coming out to the pool with his sunglasses on, in his shorts, and with perspiration on his brow, it is surely likely that this was a very warm day with plenty of sunshine. So how does the weather at the beginning of the McCann's holiday week compare with the weather on Thursday, the day Madeleine was reported missing? Let's have a close look. Here we have a chart showing the weather records for Praia de Luz on the Thursday. We can also see the same weather pattern for the week as a whole if we look at this weather chart. If we look at the top of the chart, we see the temperatures up to 21 degrees C, that's 70 degrees Fahrenheit, on the Saturday and Sunday. Then they fall away for the rest of the week, until once again the temperatures slowly begin to rise again at the end of the week. If we now look at the bottom of the chart, we see that on Saturday and Sunday there is no cloud cover at all, whilst from Monday onwards we see a great deal of cloud. They show that in the Thursday there was about 50% cloud cover from dawn, rising to nearly 100% cloud cover by the early afternoon. The temperature chart shows us that the temperature on Thursday rose from a cool 13 degrees C, 55 Fahrenheit in the morning, to just 17 degrees C, 63 Fahrenheit around midday, when the photo was supposed to have been taken, and then to 19 degrees C, 66 Fahrenheit in the afternoon. This then does not look like a day which is so warm that it causes a man to dress only in a t-shirt and shorts, dipping his feet into a cold pool, to have sweat on his brow. Not only that, but as we saw just now, Kate McCann confirms this with her own words in her book. The weather was a little on the cool side, and I remember thinking I should have brought a cardigan for her. But again, this photograph hardly gives the impression of being a little on the cool side. Sunglasses, people in short sleeves and shorts, sun hats and sweaty brow, dipping their feet in a cold pool. In fact, the only 2 days on that holiday that were hot and sunny were the Saturday and Sunday. If we have a look at the weather chart for Sunday the 29th of April, we see that the maximum temperature after midday reaches 21 degrees C or 70 degrees Fahrenheit, certainly warmer than Thursday, and we also see that the day is sunny throughout, much more like sunglasses and shorts weather. One well-respected Madeleine McCann researcher, a retired former police superintendent, has collected dated photographs to show exactly how the weather changed on the Monday of that week. Here are 3 photographs taken from almost the same place on Saturday, Sunday and Monday respectively. Here is another picture taken on Sunday at nearby Lagos, a beautiful, clear, sunny day, just as the weather on the last photograph also appears to be. The following 3 pictures, taken on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, continue to show the cooler, cloudier weather persisting through the week. The change from the sunny weather of Saturday and Sunday to the cloudier, cooler, wetter airstream which reached the Algarve during the Monday is clear. Compared with the photographs we saw earlier from Sunday, the photos from Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday all show a much greater amount of cloud cover and evidence of a cooling wind. An ex-RAF man, now an expat living in Praia de Luz, kept daily weather records. His diary confirms the cloudier, windy, cooler conditions that prevailed on that Thursday when the last photo was supposed to have been taken. As most of you watching this film will be aware, there are hundreds, indeed thousands of people who discuss the disappearance of Madeleine McCann in depth on various websites, forums and blogs. Some of these people are experts in their field, and I'm going to now quote from one of them, a retired former police superintendent who has studied the case in depth and even written an e-book on the case, available on Kindle. This is part of his professional opinion on the last photo. On the first full day of a family holiday, children and adults are dressed in their new holiday clothes. Everyone goes out to explore the resort. They look at the pool, find the supermarket, and generally get their bearings. And above all, if it is a fine sunny day, they take photos of the area, of the pool, of new and unaccustomed flowers and plants, cactuses, bougainvillea, and they take lots of photographs of their children, because you never know when it might turn cloudy or rain. Add this known behaviour to the weather reports and consider these existing photographs, and then add the relative ease with which the date can be altered on a digital image, and we may surely be forgiven for beginning to suspect that the last photo is not as it is being presented. Both Saturday and Sunday, the only 2 warm and sunny days that week, seem the probable days on which the last photo was taken, but the McCanns and their friends did not arrive in Praia de Luz until 3 p.m. on the Saturday, which rules out that day. We are forced by the available evidence to deduce that the last photograph was probably taken at lunchtime on Sunday, the 29th of April. Moreover, the retired former police officer goes on to make these very valid points. Again, I quote, "If, and only if this is correct, it gives rise to some serious concerns. The last photo may be a forgery. In English law, a forgery is any document that tells a lie about itself. It purports to be something it is not. In this case, a photo taken on Thursday the 3rd of May, the day Madeleine was reported missing. If the EXIF metadata showing the time and date had been altered, then a serious offence has been committed of attempting to pervert the course of justice. The person who altered the time and date would be involved. Any person who says it was taken on that date would also be involved. Any person who handled the photograph, the camera, or the memory chip might be involved. The person who knowingly put this photograph into the public domain would very clearly be involved, and jointly they might all be guilty of conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. So the question to be asked is clear. Where was Madeleine at lunchtime on the 3rd of May 2007? I have examined the last photo, the one on the McCann Files website, myself. McCann Files is the best known and best used internet library on the case. I discovered that the internet file on the McCann Files website has been modified with a computer package called Adobe Lightroom. Lightroom is certainly capable of changing the metadata, but this doesn't prove much. It may have been loaded into Adobe Lightroom and saved before it was received by McCann Files. What I can say, however, is that changing the date on a digital camera image file can certainly be done easily in the hands of someone familiar with digital camera technology. If someone wanted to alter the metadata on some of the photographs on their camera, they would normally have to go to someone familiar with how to do it, a camera expert. So, how and when was the last photo released to the general public? This appears to be the sequence of events. Thursday the 3rd of May, date Madeleine was reported missing. The last photo was presumably on the Canon memory card. McCanns decide to issue photo of Madeleine taken about a year ago. Several other photos are released to the media in the next few days. Sunday the 20th of May, Jerry McCann flies to England. During his visit, he was obliged to obtain any item from his house with Madeleine's DNA on it. He found a pillow, and Leicestershire police took a swab of DNA from it. Monday the 21st of May, meetings in London. On the Monday, he had extensive meetings with top British police officers and with Jim Gamble, the head of the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre. Those meetings are not really the subject of this film, but they are a topic I hope to return to in the future. Tuesday the 22nd of May. Jerry McCann says he met Tony Blair's chief media spinner Clarence Mitchell, the head of the media monitoring unit at the Central Office of Information, for the first time. Later that day they travelled to Portugal together. Also on Tuesday the 22nd of May, on the very same day, Jerry McCann's sister, Philomena McCann, also flew to Portugal to join the McCanns there. She had left her home in Ullapool, Scotland, and flown from Glasgow Airport to Portugal to join her brother, Jerry McCann. Now that might be significant because her husband, Tony Rickwood, is a camera expert and highly experienced photographer and photoshopper. His photoshopping work came to light on the DeviantArt website, which hosts all kinds of unusual and deviant digital art and photography. In Rickwood's case, some of his pictures were produced as a result of his fetish for what is called quicksand fetish art, that is, photoshopped pictures of women, sometimes naked, drowning in water, mud or quicksand. I pose this question. Whilst Jerry McCann was back in England from the Sunday to Tuesday that week, could he have met with or communicated with his sister Philomena McCann and her photoshopping husband Tony Rickwood, given him the memory card from the Canon camera or sent them a copy of the original file and asked him to simply alter the date the last photo was taken? Thursday the 24th of May. The last photo was released to the public via the Press Association. The last photo, however, was not amongst the mainly black and white photos on the 2 discs handed to the Portuguese police by Jerry McCann and Michael Wright. Why ever not? Why did they mislead the Portuguese police by not showing them this photograph? Why was it not used to produce those very first pictures of Madeleine that were released? And why did it take 3 weeks to release it? Why was it only released barely 24 hours after both Jerry McCann and his sister with the photoshopping husband arrived by plane in Portugal late on Tuesday evening, the 22nd of May? And so, finally, I ask, is 2:29 p.m. on Thursday the 3rd of May, the date Madeleine was reported missing, the true time that photograph was taken or not? So, having examined a variety of evidence, including the high possibility that the last photo was taken on Sunday, and it seems to me there are no confirmed photos of Madeleine being alive after Sunday, what other evidence do we have, if any, that Madeleine was alive for the rest of the week? The evidence can be summed up as follows. 1. The evidence of the McCanns. 2. The evidence of their tapas 7 friends. 3. The evidence of third parties, such as staff of the Ocean Club and other guests there that week. 4. The evidence of Mrs. Pamela Fenn, a lady who lived in a flat above the McCanns, who said she heard crying between 10:30 p.m. and 11:45 p.m. on Tuesday the 1st of May. And 5. The creche records, which purport to show that Madeleine attended the creche every day that week. On the face of it, even though some of the other evidence that she was alive after Sunday that we have looked at has not stood up to scrutiny, this appears to be an impressive list of evidence. But let's examine just how impressive it is. I'm going to focus first of all on the evidence of third parties that week. Then I'm going to look at some interesting aspects of the McCanns' conduct that week. I'll start by examining in detail the third party most closely involved with Madeleine that week, and that's the creche nanny Catriona Baker, or Cat Baker, the nanny in charge of the creche which included Madeleine, called the Lobster Group. This group met in a small room on the first floor of the main Ocean Club reception. It was for a small group of children aged between 3 and 5. Their names were Jessica B., Alexander M., Madeleine McCann, Elizabeth N., Ella O'Brien, daughter of Russell O'Brien and Jane Tanner, Tia P. and William T. So just 7 children, 2 of whom highlighted were Madeleine and Ella, the daughter of Jane Tanner and Russell O'Brien. Creche nannies are usually hired from many countries for the season. In Cat Baker's case, in one statement, she says she had many years' experience, and in another, just that she'd been employed by Mark Warner at the Ocean Club in the 2006 season. She was engaged again in 2007 from Saturday the 21st of April, just 1 week before the McCanns and their group of friends arrived. It seems she made a simple mistake earlier by saying she was contracted from the 21st of March. She was only 20 years old in 2007 and had apparently studied at an English university for a period. In her book, Kate McCann describes how she was introduced to Cat Baker the first afternoon they arrived. Kate says, "I warmed to her straight away." To enrol, parents take their children to the creche. Details are recorded: name of child, parent's name, contact telephone number, any health concerns such as asthma or allergies, etc. The child is then given an identity bracelet and placed in a specific group with a specific nanny. The maximum size of any group is 7. Which any nanny receives a child on day 1 remains the child's nanny for the rest of the week. There are 2 3-hour creche sessions from 9:30 till 12:30 and 2:30 till 5:30. The nanny who is responsible for the child is also responsible for the register. Mark Warner stipulates that parents must sign the children in and out of the creche, giving the time of day they have done so. Madeleine was in Kat Baker's Lobsters group, so the lobster creche records were obtained by the police after Madeleine was reported missing. This is what they look like. If we take these records at face value, then they tell us that Madeleine was in the creche for the following periods: Sunday morning 9:45 till 12:15, afternoon 2:45 till 5:30, total of 5¼ hours. Monday morning 9:30 till 12:10, afternoon 3:15 to 3:30, total of 2 hours and 55 minutes. Tuesday morning 9:30 to 12:20, afternoon Madeleine was left at the creche at 2:30 p.m, no time of collection shown. Wednesday morning 9:20 till 12:30, afternoon 2:45 to 5:30, total 4 hours and 55 minutes. Thursday morning 9:10 to 12:25, afternoon 2:50 to 5:30, total 4 hours and 55 minutes. Let's now have a closer look at Kat Baker. On the 14th of October 2007, just 5 weeks after the McCanns had been declared suspects, and the McCann team's PR efforts were at their most intense, the Mail on Sunday ran a story headed "Revealed, the nanny who could help clear the McCanns' name." The article told us, for 5 months, the identity of the Mark Warner employee who was looking after Madeleine in Pride of Luzz's Kids Club in the hours before her disappearance has been a closely held secret. On the morning after Madeleine's disappearance, it is believed she even told Portuguese police of a man she had seen acting suspiciously around the apartments. Today we can reveal her identity as 20-year-old Catriona Baker, the daughter of a nurse and draftsman from Manchester. Miss Baker has told friends she is convinced of the McCann's innocence. She is still in contact with Kate McCann. Intriguingly, Miss Baker revealed to one friend, spoken to by this newspaper, that she told Portuguese police of a man she saw acting strangely near the apartment in the days leading up to Madeleine's disappearance on the 3rd of May. She was interviewed for just 3 hours by the police on the morning of Madeleine's disappearance. The Mail on Sunday has also learned that within 24 hours of that interview, Miss Baker was dispatched by Mark Warner to take up a new post in the Greek resort of San Agostino, along with 4 other members of staff. They were all linked to the 7 holidaymakers who had eaten in the resort's tapas restaurant with Kate and Jerry on the night of Madeleine's disappearance. On the day Madeleine disappeared, Miss Baker had spent nearly 6 hours with the toddler. In the afternoon, the McCanns played tennis, while Madeleine went back to her nanny at the children's club, who gave her tea at 5:30 p.m. Madeleine, Sean and Amelie were picked up by their parents at 6 p.m. The Mail on Sunday article states as a fact that the McCanns played tennis, while Madeleine went back to her nanny at the children's club, who gave her tea at 5:30 p.m. Madeleine, Sean and Amelie were picked up by their parents at 6 p.m. But earlier I explained that there were so many contradictions about the claim that Madeleine and the twins and their parents were having high tea together that we could not rely on those accounts as proving that Madeleine was alive at that time. And Kate's later story was not that she was playing tennis, but that she went for a long run along the beach. Let's also observe that in this statement in the Mail on Sunday, it sweeps aside all the McCann's evidence, contradictory though it was, about picking up the children at 5:25 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. We saw how Kate claimed that Jerry had got there before Kate, and that she had come to the high tea straight from her long jog along the beach, etc., etc. The Kat Baker article contradicts all of that by simply saying the parents, plural, picked her up at 6 p.m. Another interesting feature of the Mail article is the claim that Kat Baker saw a man acting suspiciously. The Mail article tells us that Kat Baker had spoken to a friend who then spoke to the Mail on Sunday. According to the Mail, she was said to have told the Portuguese police of a man acting strangely near the apartments in the days leading up to Madeleine's disappearance. This is, of course, classic hearsay evidence. Spoke to a friend, spoke to a newspaper. But now let's look at what she actually told the Portuguese police at the time when she made a statement to them on Sunday the 6th of May, just days after Madeleine's reported disappearance. We might bear in mind here that what she says was translated into Portuguese by the controversial Robert Murat, acting as an English-Portuguese translator. Here is her statement. Questioned, she responds that since she has been working with the little girl, it has seemed to her that the parents were attentive to their daughter, given that they asked what Madeleine had done in the creche, and that they even accompanied Madeleine a few times in certain outside activities. Concerning the little girl, she states that she was an active and sociable child. Only on the first day was she more reticent within the group. The informant reports that during the time that Madeleine was entrusted to her care, at no time did it seem to her that the little girl was sad or unhappy, and she never made any comment about being cross, sad, or discontent about anything. She also reports that she was an obedient child who never wandered from the group and who never spoke to strangers. When asked, the informant responds that it was always the parents who brought Madeleine and fetched her from the mini-club. Let's just note what she says in this paragraph about whether she saw anyone suspicious. When questioned, she responds that in the course of her work on the company's premises and outside, as described above, she has never noticed anyone in particular or suspicious watching the children with whom she was working. She did not notice anyone taking photos of the children, and notably of Madeleine. She states that she never heard her colleagues refer to such things either. One thing we notice in her statement is that she says nothing at all about what activities she and her group were doing that week. There's no detail whatsoever about what Madeleine was doing. She doesn't mention any specific incidents about her at all. But she is quite clear in this initial statement about these three things. She never noticed anyone in particular or suspicious watching the children. She didn't notice anyone taking photos of any of the children. And she never heard her colleagues refer to such things either. So here we have an absolute contradiction. Less than 72 hours after Madeleine is reported missing, she is quite clear that she never noticed anyone suspicious. Yet 5 months later, we find out from the Mail on Sunday that she is a friend of the McCanns, has spoken to them, that the McCanns have invited her to visit their home, and that she has now spoken to a friend who has spoken to the newspaper. Now the Mail on Sunday suddenly claims that she saw a man acting suspiciously in the days leading up to Madeleine's disappearance. Kat Baker still seems to be on close terms with the McCanns today. There was even one indication that she may have been known to the McCanns before 2007. As soon as Kat Baker's name was made public, Madeleine McCann researchers looked her up on the internet. It was established that Kat Baker had been back in 2006, before Madeleine disappeared in 2007, a Facebook friend of Chloe Corner, the daughter of John Corner, who is Madeleine's godfather. John Corner later stated that he had been a frequent visitor to Praia de Luz. Today Kat Baker has a different surname and remains friends with Chloe Corner. So already we have two reasons for not trusting Kat Baker as a witness of truth. Moreover, we have a third possible contradiction regarding Kat Baker's claim that Madeleine went sailing on the morning of Thursday the 3rd of May, the day Madeleine was reported missing. This comes about from Kat Baker's third statement in the case, this time to Leicestershire Police, on the 18th of April 2008. Here it is. I got to know Jerry and Kate McCann on the Sunday morning, 29th of the 4th 2007, in the Minis Club. They brought the children, and as it was their first day of holidays, the normal procedure was that they were allocated a childcare worker. I visited the family in their home, at their invitation, to see how they were getting along in November 2007. On Thursday the 3rd of May 2007, I remember Jerry having accompanied Madeleine to the club between 9:15 and 9:20 that morning. I do not remember who came to pick her up for lunch, but after, she returned in the afternoon for a dive/swim. On this day I remember that we sailed and I saw friends of the McCanns on the beach. Around 14:45 Madeleine returned to the Minis Club on top of the reception, but I do not remember who accompanied her. This afternoon we went swimming. Kate went to get Madeleine from the Tapasport area, and according to what I remember, she was wearing sporting clothes, and I assumed she was participating in some form of athletics. It was around 1525 to 1800. I think that Jerry was playing tennis. There was one occasion on Thursday the 3rd of May 2007, around 10:30 in the morning, where she cried at the launch of the yellow safety boat in the ocean where all the children were sailing. She was scared and fearful and cried on my lap, "I am scared, I am scared." We only used the launches to transport the children to the small yellow boats. When we returned to the other boat, she was happy again. She sailed in the small boat, and even though some children had the opportunity to return to the port, she stayed for a second time in the small boat, as she appeared to be having a good time. Looking in more detail at her statement, she told the police that during the first 2 days, Sunday the 29th and Monday the 30th of April, the children played and did activities in the sand. On Thursday, she says, they sailed to the next beach in the morning in a small yellow catamaran. On the 10th of May, 7 days after Madeleine was reported missing, Inspector Pino and a colleague asked Kat Baker to accompany them on a reconstruction of what supposedly happened that previous Thursday morning. It is possible they already had suspicion that Madeleine was not present or that the events as reported were untrue. Here's part of his statement. Today, 10th of May 2007, accompanied by Geo Barreras and Catriona Baker, the nanny responsible for the missing minor, we retraced the places and times at which they left the resort to go to Praia de Luz. We were told by Catriona that they went to the beach on Thursday between 10 and 11 o'clock. And 1. The parents left the children at Baby Club Mark Warner, situated next to the principal reception and which is open 24 hours. 2. Then Catriona with Madeleine and 4 or 5 more children walked toward the beach about 100 metres. 3. She was always in front with the children behind, linked together in a snake. 4. They crossed Rua de Rita, turned right towards Pico do Nordeste to the bottom of the steps at Travessa das Redes. 5. After reaching the beach, they went along a boardwalk to an area where there was a red awning and several thatched sunshades. 6. On that day, they sailed in a small yellow catamaran. But Inspector Pino's report also noted this, that Alice Stanley accompanied the children on the route and on the boat. 3 children sailed with her. Chris Unsworth transported the children in a red amphibious boat, a life-saving boat, until the boat reached the open area, and, a few minutes later, returned them to the beach to pick up 3 other children from the group. Both state that the children did not have any contact with anyone else during the time they were at the beach, as was the case during their walk to the beach. They both add that they did not see anyone suspicious looking at the children or in the surrounding areas. So both these witnesses, according to Inspector Pino, do not mention that Kat Baker went sailing with Madeleine's group that morning. There is no mention in Inspector Pino's report of whether Alice Stanley or Chris Unsworth say Madeleine was in either of the boats of 3 children that went sailing that morning. There were 7 children in the Lobsters group. It looks like the other 6 children in the group all went sailing in 2 boats of 3 each, but that Madeleine perhaps not. In plain terms, then, it appears from these statements that Kat Baker, or the friend who spoke to the Mail on Sunday, may have fabricated claims about Madeleine going sailing that morning. Also, Kat Baker made the claim that all the children were required to wear identity bracelets while being looked after that week. But there were no ID bracelets photographed on any child that week before the 3rd of May, the date Madeleine was reported missing. In her first statement to the Portuguese police in May 2007, she told them, "I have been in Portugal since March the 21st of this year, and this is my first visit to the country. My contract started on the 21st of March 2007. Earlier, she said, the 21st of April, which may have just been a simple mistake, and ends on the 7th of November 2007. But 1 year later, talking to Leicestershire Police on the 18th of April, she contradicted herself. She said, I work in childcare. I was contracted by Mark Warner in June of 2006. The first time I went to Portugal was the 21st of March 2006, where I worked as a childcare worker in the Ocean Club village, Praia de Luz. I went to a work interview and was contracted for 1 year by Mark Warner in June of 2006. Why, when first questioned, did she not mention having worked in Portugal the previous year? There is one particular incident that stands out from that week, which, it is said, really does prove that Madeleine McCann was alive on the Tuesday at least. And that is the testimony of an 82-year-old widow, Mrs. Pamela Fenn, who died in 2011. She told the police, though only 3 months later, as we shall see, that she heard a child, presumably Madeleine, crying from 10:30 p.m. to 11:45 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday the 1st of May. She says that she then heard a door closing at 11:45 p.m. and then the crying stopped. On the face of it, there is no reason to suspect that this was anything other than the unvarnished truth. Why would an 82-year-old widow lie about anything, especially something so serious? But, as with almost everything in this case, nothing is quite what it seems. So let's now probe her statement in detail. I will read out the relevant parts of her statement. Mrs. Pamela Fenn, 20th of August 2007. She has lived in the apartment since 2003. She also refers to the day of the 1st of May 2007, when she was home alone. At approximately 22:30 she heard a child cry, and that due to the tone the crying seemed to be a young child and not a baby of 2 years of age or younger. That night she contacted a friend called Edna Glynn, who also lives in Praia de Luz, after 2300 hours, telling her about the situation, who was not surprised at the child's crying. On the 3rd of May she received a visit from her niece Carol during the morning, who said that when she was on her terrace she saw a male individual looking into the McCanns' apartment. She claims, however, that a week previously she was the victim of an attempted robbery, which was not successful, and neither was anything taken, thinking that the crying of the child could be linked to another attempted robbery in the residence. So there are 3 elements to her story. 1, she says she heard a child crying for 75 minutes continuously on Tuesday the 1st of May, 2 days before Madeleine went missing. 2, she says she was burgled in the week before Madeleine went missing. And 3, she says on the day Madeleine went missing, her niece, Carol Tranmer, visited her and happened to see a man peering suspiciously into the McCanns' apartment. But first, let's notice when she makes her statement. She does so on the 20th of August 2007. That's over 3.5 months, or 111 days since the date she says she heard the crying on Tuesday the 1st of May. So exactly how did Mrs. Fenn's statement, with its dramatic news of a burglar, a suspicious man, and a child's crying for 75 minutes come about? By looking at the lead-up to it, this will help us to form a view on whether Mrs. Fenn was telling the truth or not. Newspaper coverage about Mrs. Fenn in several British newspapers suddenly broke on Saturday the 18th of August 2007. It's strange that the story broke 2 days before she gave her statement to the police. This is what the Sun told us. Their story was headed, "Your sis, Maddie, is missing," and featured the McCanns' claim that only now, 3 months after Madeleine went missing, had the McCanns told their twins, Emily and Sean, that Madeleine had been abducted. But the story also made these revelations about Mrs. Pamela Fenn. The Portuguese cops are again under fire. The woman living in the apartment above the McCanns claimed she had not been spoken to by police until the British team arrived 2 weeks ago. Expat Pamela Fenn told them she disturbed a burglar at her apartment about 3 weeks before Maddie vanished. She is now to give a formal statement to Portuguese officers. A friend said she was surprised that neither the police nor the McCanns had approached her before. Pamela also said that her niece, who stayed with her the week Maddie disappeared, spotted somebody fitting the description of a man seen carrying a child away under a blanket. The pal added he was acting suspiciously. I have no doubt that the so-called friend mentioned in this story is none other than the McCann's official PR spokesman, Clarence Mitchell, whose job at the time Madeleine was reported missing was the head of Tony Blair's propaganda machine, the Media Monitoring Unit at the Central Office of Information. In this story, the burglary is said to have taken place 3 weeks before Madeleine went missing, not 1 week as she says in her official statement. The article quotes the friend as saying that Mrs. Fenn was surprised that the police had not approached her before. Surely the much greater surprise is that Mrs. Fenn had done nothing for 3.5 months to report an attempted burglary, a suspicious man hanging round the McCann's apartment, and hearing a child sobbing her heart out in the apartment below her for 75 minutes, 2 days before she was reported missing. And we must ask ourselves, how likely is it, in the aftermath of the alleged abduction, the police would fail to visit whoever lived immediately above them to find out if they saw or heard anything that night? The article also says that Mrs. Fenn's niece, Carol Tranmere, stayed with Mrs. Fenn that week. However, Carol Tranmere told the police that she had stayed elsewhere in Portugal and only visited her aunt on a couple of occasions. Another contradiction. Mrs. Fenn's niece, Carol Tranmere, later said that the man she said she saw fitted the description of a man carrying a child away under a blanket. But it wasn't until late October, nearly 6 months later, that the McCann team released this artist's sketch of the man supposedly seen by Jane Tanner. Before then, there was no detailed description of him. So what description could Mrs. Fenn and her niece, Carol Tranmere, be referring to? It could only be the vague description given out by Jerry McCann on the 25th of May to the world's media, as reported by the BBC that day when they described the man as white, 35 to 40, 5'10" in height, wearing beige or light trousers, wearing dark jacket and shoes. Leaving aside the clothes the man was wearing, such a description, white, 35, 5'10", could fit any number of individuals. Many of the 400 or so guests at the Ocean Club that week were parents of European origin of children under 5. It could have been almost any of them. So on what basis could Carol Tranmere declare that the man she saw for a few seconds fitted the description of the man seen by Jane Tanner? The Daily Mirror added some detail about the alleged burglary. It told its readers, Pamela Fenn said a man broke into her flat weeks before Madeleine disappeared. There was no sign of a break-in, and it's thought the intruder may have had a key. She reported the incident to Portuguese police, but they did not question her again. The report went on. Mrs. Fenn, who was in her 70s, found the man scrambling out of the window and tried to grab his ankle, but he escaped. Whether Mrs. Fenn did report this incident at the time to the police is a moot point. I am not aware that they have confirmed that Mrs. Fenn reported this to them. In any case, if one looks at all the reports about whether Mrs. Fenn did or did not report this to the police at the time, it is very confusing. One version is that she didn't report the incident at the time, another is that she never reported it at all, another is that she never reported it all, yet one more says that, because nothing was stolen, she thought it unimportant, whilst a fourth, contradicting all the others, said she was beside herself with fear and contacted the police. These inconsistencies do not inspire confidence in Mrs. Fenn as a witness of truth, or at least those reporting what she said. But now, how credible is this statement? Found the man scrambling out of the window and tried to grab his ankle. Especially when we see how far Mrs. Fenn's windows were above the ground level. And also considering that Mrs. Fenn was 81 years old at the time, not in her 70s, as wrongly stated in some newspaper reports. The drop from the window of the flat to the ground must be 12 to 15 feet, meaning that he would have likely to have suffered injury if this story is true. But she says nothing about what happened to him after he scrambled out of the window. Did he run off? Did anyone else see him jump and report it? And did she really try to grab his ankle? Did she nearly catch him with her outstretched arm as he was in the very act of leaping out of the window? The Mirror report continued. Mrs. Fenn's information only resurfaced after British police reviewed the case 2 weeks ago. Mrs. Fenn will now be formally interviewed for the first time on Monday. The timing of all these newspaper reports is of great interest. It was in the first week of August that the 2 Springer Spaniels used by top police dog handler Martin Grime alerted to the scent of a corpse and blood in 17 different locations, in their apartment, on their clothes, and in their hired car associated with the McCanns. As is clear from Kate McCann's book Madeleine, the McCanns were in a state of panic at this time. I suggest that these stories about Mrs. Fenn were planted in the British media in a fresh attempt to deflect from the disturbing leaks coming from the Portuguese police about the scent of a corpse, and about cadaver odour being found in the McCann's apartment and in the hire car. Did these articles serve an ulterior purpose? If Mrs. Fenn's story about the crying incident was right, then that would surely prove that Madeleine was still alive on the evening of Tuesday the 1st of May, which is part of the McCann's version of events. The Mail on Sunday followed up these stories the day after by claiming that the under-fire Portuguese police are preparing to take a fresh look at reports of 2 earlier break-ins in the apartment block where Madeleine McCann and her family stayed. Both burglaries, the Mail said, one in the apartment directly above the McCann's flat, are understood to have happened 2 weeks before the McCanns arrived in Praia de Luz. So now we have this burglary occurring 1 week before the McCanns and Madeleine were there, then 3 weeks, and now 2 weeks. You would think that if they were going to invent a burglary or two, they would have agreed beforehand on an actual date. The Mail on Sunday also gave us this new account of what Mrs. Fenn said happened when a man attempted to burgle her. They reported Mrs. Fenn scared him off. She told friends she heard a noise as she watched television and found a man escaping through her bedroom window. Her niece, who was staying with her, also saw the man. This is different from earlier accounts in 2 respects. One, her niece Carol Tranmer is now, for the first time, said to have been present and witnessed the burglary. 2, there is now no mention of Mrs. Fenn trying to grab the man's ankle. There was no suggestion or evidence that Mrs. Fenn's flat had been broken into by this man. He is said to have either walked in through an unlocked door, or he had a key or swipe card that would enable him to enter. Why on earth would he choose to dive out of a window 12 feet or more above the ground when he could have simply walked or run back out of the apartment door? The whole story seems questionable. But then, in yet another version of this event, the man is said to have either broken in or climbed in through the window. The British media reports about burglars in Praia de Luz continued. The day after Mrs. Fenn eventually gave her statement at Portimao Police Station, the Evening Standard ran another dramatic headline: "Burglar was on loose at Maddie Resort." The next day, 22nd of August, the Portuguese newspaper Correio da Manhã ran an even more dramatic story titled "Maddie Screamed for Her Father." Now, Mrs. Fenn gave her witness statement to the Portuguese police on Monday the 20th of August, 2 days after the spate of news reports in the British press. Indeed, it almost seemed as though certain people had arranged for Mrs. Fenn to make her statement to the police, just so that 2 days earlier they could generate banner headlines in the British mainstream media about Madeleine. All this news about Mrs. Fenn being interviewed by the Portuguese police was, despite the alleged confidentiality and secrecy of the police investigation, which the McCanns so often spoke about. It seems, though, that the secrecy of the investigation was convenient when the McCanns were asked difficult or embarrassing questions, but could be broken at will when the McCann team wanted to get their message out. Anyway, despite the so-called secrecy of the investigation, Correio da Manhã was able to give full details of what she told the police. The newspaper said, Mrs. Fenn confirmed she heard Maddie crying for her father the day before she disappeared. This is untrue, because in her actual statement she says the crying was on the Tuesday night, the 1st of May, not the Wednesday night. But later that day, on the Portuguese SIC News TV channel, a very different story about Mrs. Fenn was beginning to emerge. Here are some excerpts from that broadcast. Mrs. Pamela Fenn, the British octogenarian who lives above the apartment from where Maddie disappeared, says she has been harassed by the unwanted interest of journalists and has denied having spoken to the police. She said she didn't have any information about the case. At the age of 81, this quiet, retired British woman seems to have been seriously shaken. After an outburst by her at her hairdresser's, news that she was a witness in the Madeleine McCann case quickly became known to journalists' ears. According to what she said to have told the police, the night before Madeleine was reported missing, she heard a child crying and calling for her father for a long time. The fact that she spends most of the day on her veranda with a view across the tapas restaurant made the police return to the Ocean Club on Monday morning. Detectives quizzed her for about 4 hours to see if she had seen someone from the McCann group leave the restaurant to go and check on the children. Angry at the journalists' questions, Mrs. Fenn denied being a witness in the case and said that what the press was saying was pure speculation.
I have been here 3 months since all this happened. I've never spoken to a journalist. They've written rubbish in the newspapers. I've never even uttered a word. It's all rubbish.
And then, the following day, the 23rd of August, the Daily Express returned to the subjects of the alleged burglary at Mrs. Fenn's apartment, the suspicious man allegedly seen hanging around the McCann's apartment, and the crying incident. On the alleged burglary, the Express wrote, Mrs. Fenn has also told police about an attempted burglary at her apartment several weeks earlier. She said a man broke in through the first floor window, but she disturbed him and he jumped out of it. The source said she did not think it was significant. She has lived in Luz for some time and at her previous address was the victim of burglaries on a regular basis. There are lots of drug addicts in the area who prey on tourists' apartments. Nothing was taken, so she did not initially report it to the police. There are several points to note here. 1. In this report, and I think this bit is true, she never reported this break-in and attempted burglary to the police at the time. 2. She thought it of no significance. 3. We're told this incident was not 1 week before the McCanns went on holiday to Praia de Luz, not 2, not 3, but now several weeks. And 4. No longer did the man enter the room with a key, but now he is said to have broken in through the first floor window, even though it was some 12 feet or more above the ground, and there was no obvious way to climb up to it. But now we get a whole new burglar story in the Express, a second burglary. The report of an intruder echoes the experience of a Scottish holidaymaker at the Ocean Club Resort just 3 weeks before Madeleine went missing. The woman told police that an intruder used a key to enter her apartment at the Mark Warner Run Resort on the first night of her stay, making off with personal belongings and £500 worth of currency. It was in the same block as the one where the little girl was taken from, she said. The police were called. They told us someone with a key had got into the flat. There were no broken windows and no forced entry. The Scottish holidaymaker wasn't named, so the story could not be checked. There's no credible evidence, to my knowledge, to support either burglary. Regarding the story that Mrs. Fenn's niece, Carol Tranmer, had seen a suspicious man lurking around the McCann's apartment, the Express also purported to reveal new details about this. They told their readers, Mrs. Fenn's niece, who has now been interviewed by detectives in Britain, spotted a suspicious-looking man hanging around the McCann's apartment about the time Madeleine disappeared. She told detectives that he matched the description of a suspect seen by Jane Tanner, one of the McCann's holiday friends. Miss Tanner reported seeing the man rushing away from the apartment with a child wrapped in a blanket under his arm. A second witness spotted the man minutes later rushing past the church in the resort and heading to the seafront. The dark-haired man was wearing white trousers and a dark jacket. I made the point earlier that Carol Tranmer in August would only have known that the alleged abductor was white, 35 to 40, 5'10" in height, nothing else. Not until late October was this artist's sketch of the abductor released to the public. So how could Carol Tranmer be so sure that the man she said she had seen matched Jane Tanner's description? But now, in August, we hear from the Express about a man with dark hair, dark jacket and white trousers heading towards the sea, also carrying a child. The Express says that both the man seen by Jane Tanner and the other man were rushing. Those of you who have watched my film The Phantoms will instantly recognise this man with dark hair, dark jacket and white trousers. It is the description given to the Portuguese police by Irishman Martin Smith and 2 members of his family. And in my film I produced persuasive evidence that this alleged sighting, which I call Smith Man, may also have been fabricated. In the Express report, we are seriously being invited to believe that the very same man, with dark hair, dark jacket and white trousers, was seen by Carol Tranmere lurking around the McCanns' apartment during the afternoon of the 3rd of May, then seen by Jane Tanner near the McCanns' apartment at 9:15 p.m. carrying a child in pyjamas, and then seen by a second witness, unidentified, later on heading towards the beach. All of these 3 so-called sightings have so many problems about them that none of them seem to have any credibility. As I explained in my film The Phantoms, the Metropolitan Police said on BBC Crime Watch in October 2013 that a man had come forward 6 years after the event to identify himself as the man carrying a child seen by Jane Tanner. That tale by Detective Chief Inspector Andy Redwood seemed equally suspect. Most likely it was yet another fabrication in this mystery littered with fabricated statements.